course, we were just talking about one aspect with regards to what needs to be reformed with how our government is run and more specifically how it's financed with regards to campaign financing. But there are wider changes, or at least many changes across our broad spectrum of various government functions that I think various contributors or commentators have been bringing up. The Prime Minister himself brought up one. The solution that he brought up might not necessarily be something that everybody has faith in. It's an unfortunate situation where, technically speaking, because we have these issues, it's hard to trust the system, but we need to trust people to fix the issues so that they're resolved and we could have faith in it. It's a circular logic situation that is a bit of a pain. But Karen, I mean, we could start off with regards to the service commissions. The Prime Minister basically said, let's do away with them. Let's just put in a tribunal. Already somebody, a former head of some of these commissions said it's not going to be that easy. He thinks constitutional reform on a whole needs to be done. That seems to be what the Prime Minister is trying to avoid based on how he presented it this weekend.
Yes, and we have to be careful, certainly, in commenting on it, because he didn't go into much detail. He sort of set the cat among the pigeons. And clearly, what he did say was we should do away with the service commissions and replace it with a tribunal. But no, as far as I'm aware, he has not gone into further detail. It's like when he decided in, I think, 2018 to close down the refinery. Was that a good idea? Well, I think time has shown that may not have been the way to go. But coming back to the service commissions, there is a real concern about that, because it appears on the face of it, certainly to myself, I'm not saying it is so, but it certainly gives that appearance as executive overreach. And why would I say that? Because the purpose, which he said was the reason for service commissions, was to ensure the independence of, our system of government is based on the parliamentary system of government, which we inherited from the United Kingdom, judiciary, legislative, and, of course, executive. And this new development of doing away with the public service commissions without, well, I guess he's going to tell us, it seems like an attempt at executive overreach, the very reason why those service commissions were appointed. He actually said that part of the reason was that people didn't have faith that it was being fair, that it was being transparent, and it was racially motivated. I think that is the words that he used. The problem with the Prime Minister, well, as yet not detailing it, the problem with the Prime Minister coming with that is this. And I'll just give some examples, because first out, I didn't study government, but anybody can look it up. And in a democratic system of government, what is key is a social contract between the people and the government who they have entrusted with to run the country in their own interest, which is why you find the preamble to many pieces of legislation start about equality, transparency, integrity, accountability. Those are the watchwords of those pieces of legislation. And they're there for a good reason, because that is what people expect when the government takes a step. But you see, the last few, I'll start first with actually the Police Service Commission. And I will also mention what the Prime Minister had to say about removing the power of the Prime Minister to deal with appointment of DPP in particular, because that has been in the news, and what his views were, which are recorded in the Hansard for anyone who wishes to look at it. So the Police Service Commission, I mean, it is going to raise issues that why did Mr. Prasad, who was the chair of the president of the Police Service Commission, who had followed whatever the regulations, the Constitution required to follow, go to the then president with the merit list, and at the top of the list, it has been reported, Gary Griffith, and the Prime Minister being there the same day and speaking with and then the president saying the list was withdrawn. What does that mean? Never explain what it meant. But what I do know is that according to the Constitution, which she has spoken about in relation to having someone act as Commissioner of Police, she has made it clear, sorry to use she, the President has made it very clear that her powers are confined to the walls of the Constitution, and she has no powers outside of that. So once that risk was given to her, how could it be taken out? What caused her to do that? And the next thing she was supposed to do is prepare a notification to Parliament and let Parliament debate it. So what caused the risk to be withdrawn? We have never gotten a proper explanation. Does that inspire confidence in the distinction between the executive and the commissions who are there to act as independent bodies from executive overreach? No, it does not. And also, too, there is in the Hansard, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister, he was not then Prime Minister, Mr. Manning was Prime Minister at the time, but you could sense the anger that he felt, because under the Constitution, Section 111, the Judicial Legal Service Commission is responsible for the appointment of certain officers, and among them is the DPP. Among them is the DPP. And when 111.3, if I remember, if a name of a person, they don't specify, but persons who fall in that category, are brought to the Prime Minister, he said in the quiet of his office, he used that term, in the quiet of his office, and he does not agree to the appointment of that person, that name is taken away. Nobody knows. Parliament doesn't know. He doesn't agree. So it is in that context, he was absolutely beside himself. He said that the Prime Minister made that arrangement because he wanted the opposition to support some of his legislation. And he used an expression, I can't remember, but it was really very, very distasteful. But he made it very clear that he did not like the taking away of the executive power to determine who was the DPP, and instead to turn it to the Parliament, to the legislature. So that gives you an idea how the gentleman thinks.
Well, go ahead.
Yes, so I'm giving that was one example. Another more recent example is this Brent Thomas.
Yes.
I mean, say he came in a CARICOM boat, plane. What in heaven's name does that have anything to do with it? I don't know that the extradition laws say it must be on a BWIA plane. No, it's not BWIA anymore. Sorry, living in the past.
Caribbean Airlines.
Caribbean Airlines plane or whatever. That's not it. There are certain extradition rules that govern international relations, because you're talking about the sovereignty of two countries. And some countries do not have extradition legislation, which is why some people go to those countries, because they know they cannot be extradited. So how could you have a plane, CARICOM plane, I don't care who plane, without the ministers of foreign affairs, without the authorization, and have what I consider not very senior officers taking, I suppose, this gentleman in handcuffs on the tarmac in Barbados. Which means Barbados also had to have agreed. But I'm not a Barbadian, I'm a Trinidadian. And that is very worrying. And you have heard nothing about it from the Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, who said she's working hard to bring down the crime rate. But there goes your list. And you hear nothing from any of these people, but it's an absolute breach of international law. And it is not an extradition, but unless they come with information, it's an abduction and a kidnapping, which shows that the executive, because they said they had to have gotten authorization from somebody very high. And the person who made the statement, they're just like, who was in the room with the president? A senior person.
Government official.
But that person had to be real senior to have that power.
It's always the senior government official, right?
Yeah, but you think you could guess who could have the authority to do something like that? That would be real senior. And if you can allow that, that's an example of executive overreach. Because what the executive is saying, we don't care what the laws are. We don't care that we will do what we want. You going to trust somebody like that who took 8 years to pass your procurement law, who tells you he has the campaign financing legislation, which does not need the support of the opposition. You're going to trust someone like that to, I'm sorry, it's trust and confidence.
Well, I want to look at the wider.
So the tribunal, I'm concerned.
Right, because Professor Diosaran, he is the former head of the Police Service Commission and Teaching Service Commission, Ramesh Diosaran. He warned that it would take more than trying to reform the service commissions, and I believe he's implying to just replace it with a single entity. He is saying that it should necessarily be based on constitutional reform. And the Prime Minister actually has been reported saying that he doesn't want to change the system. He wants to try to work within what we already have. But what we already have this situation where we're questioning the independence of the service commissions. Well, now you replace it with a tribunal. Who picks that? Will it be independent? There are other areas where we need reform, and you're also alluding to the separation of powers between the executive and the legislature. And all of that would be covered by constitutional reform, and perhaps now the call for constitutional reform. Again, every now and then somebody mentions it. It rears its head, and then it just goes back down in its cave, goes back to sleep, because it doesn't go very far in the conversation. Usually the crisis of the day kind of takes precedence, perhaps, and makes us forget about the question of constitutional reform.
Sometimes you get the sense that they want to give a deflection. So once he said that, the deflection...
Well, the deflection doesn't always come from the government, to be fair, but very often...
But this is the government I'm talking about, right? So what I want to tell you with regard to that, my point is, this is my point. My point is this, that if you say that the reason for the public service commissions were to do those same things, independence from the executive, and lack of bias and misuse, etc. If you say that is the reason, and also delay in dealing with matters, I would like to see with the tribunal, which you are going to put, which I would support if it can do all those things with the right people. But I am sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, so many things have happened in this country, AV drilling, I could go on. And I just want to mention, I said we have to go for a break soon, but I told Sean that I saw on today's papers, they're saying 9 years now since Dina Sitahal's death. And I just want to, because on a personal level, Dina Sarup Sitahal, as I knew originally, were very, 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 very good friends for a long time. I knew the whole family. Her first car, my father went to collect it with her, and every day before she went to work with the state, a weekday, she came to my parents' home and had dinner, and then we drop her home. So I know Dina very well, and I know her sisters and brothers and family well. And why I'm saying all of that, police officers told me they cried. They cried when Dina was killed. And they tried to warn her. And what is the key thing I have to say is that Brownfield, the Assistant DA on Drugs and Enforcement in the United States in 2014, said very clearly that Dana's death was the work of a transnational entity working in Trinidad. And Figueroa then said, it's not only the Colombian transnational we have, but it has gone south of the Caroni, and we have now the Mexican transnational. He said, how are we going to be able to break the force of those entities that are transnational in nature, a little country like ours, where they probably have more guns right now, as we speak, coming into the country, that they could probably take on the government. Okay, so just say, please speed up the issue with Ms. Dina Sitahal, a good person, an honest person, and it's really unfair to the family.
Also, just to link the two, it's difficult for the country to have faith that you could deal with transnational criminal entities on that scale, when domestically, it's hard to just have faith in the day-to-day runnings of our own country.
And the DPP has half of the staff he needs, and he's been telling me that for ever so long.
Just another area where some sort of reform probably needs to happen.